Hey, what is up? Welcome to Dharma Time here on WPSN99.com. As always, I'm your host, the Dharma Guy, here with the Dope Doctor.
What's up, man?
What's going on, man? How you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. It's a beautiful Tuesday. I don't even know what day it is.
It's Tuesday. You're doing better than your daughter, man. What happened? She broke her foot, dude?
Just found out, man.
That's crazy.
I'm sitting here, prepping for the show and everything like that. My daughter sends a text message of her. She shows a picture of her foot. It's all purple. She goes to the doctor.
How did she break it? What did she kick?
Well, she denies the kicking.
How you going to deny kicking with a broken foot?
No, she says she was walking off one of those, not railroad ties, but, like at a parking lot, a little concrete.
Yeah, the stopper or whatever.
And then it slipped down, and then her foot bent in half frontwards.
Gosh, that's horrible.
Sounds painful.
That sounds horrible.
It looked worse.
Wow. Anyways, well, yes, it is a relatively nice Tuesday here.
She needs to forgive herself.
She does need to forgive herself. It's amazing. It's like we're going to talk about that in a minute. Yes, it's a relatively decent Tuesday. Still kind of hot for me, but that's all right. It's a little overcast, so I'm cool with that. We are on the coast, so it is nice. Yeah. Real quick, let's do some house cleaning before we get started. We got it helps us stay on the show for an hour without commercials.
I clean out.
Yeah, well, the other housekeeping,
okay.
The one that pays the bills. We have some sponsors we'd like to thank. First and foremost, we got Retreat Behavioral Health, we got Journey Pure, and we have Gatehouse Treatment, all three treatment facilities that we work with and send people to who are dealing with the disease of addiction.
That's right.
Of course, we have Orange County Drug Free Coalition, been a sponsor of the show, 20 years. Well, not this show, but the network, I guess.
Right.
And we have, of course, Now Matters More Foundation, of which you were wearing a lovely shirt. You are the founder. I'm the prez. You can see us at nowmattersmore.org. Once again, nowmattersmore.org or 833-NOW-MATTERS.
That's right.
And then we have our newest sponsor, the one that's got an event coming up, is Sport Subaru South. They got the Share the Love event coming up from November 15th to December 31st, where combined between them and Subaru as a whole is we give $500 per car purchased in that time frame to the foundation. So thank you for that. That is awesome.
Right.
Looking forward to that event. And then, of course, if you want to follow us on social media, it's at WPSN99, at The Dharma Guy, and at The Dope Doctor.
Right.
And you can look and subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/Dharma Time. I think that's everything, right?
Wow, you do that really well.
It's like I've done it before. It's
you would
weird.
think.
I'm like a pro.
Yeah.
Anyways.
You are an advertising pro.
That's right. It got to be, right?
So if you'd like to advertise on Dharma Time, please make sure to call.
Yeah, WPSN99.com.
Yeah.
Little Shooter McGavin. All right, so
Shooter McGavin.
we're talking forgiveness today, right?
Yeah.
And I know forgiveness has been in our back pocket for quite some time. It's a very difficult topic, I think, for a lot of people. So I know we're going to break this up into multiple shows. And so today, our main focus for this aspect of forgiveness is going to be forgiving yourself.
All right.
And the reason why I separate this is because for those of you who've been watching for a while and know anything about us personally, we both have done groups, him significantly longer than I have, but we've done groups in different facilities.
Because I'm an old man.
You are. And when I would go and do spiritual groups, I would have them broken down into like different days. And one of the days was forgiveness. And forgiveness was always one of the hardest days. And whenever I would tell people, hey, we're talking about forgiveness today, they would immediately, almost everybody in the room would immediately think of one of two things. They would either think of A, somebody or something that has hurt them so badly that they can never forgive them.
Yeah.
Or B, something they've done to somebody else or to themselves that they think is so bad they can never forgive themselves. Okay. Those are typically the two kind of focal points.
So someone else or self.
Correct. And so I think today we're going to focus on forgiving yourself. And then I'm pretty sure, I'm a psychic here, but I think we're going to have another show in the future talking about forgiving others. But
you think?
Yeah, I think so.
You think it might parlay?
Maybe. Anyways,
that was the goal, right?
That was. All right. So forgiving yourself. What does that even mean? Like, what does that mean to you? If I ask you forgiving yourself, what does that mean? What do you think of?
I just think of almost like letting go. Let it go. There's nothing you can do to change it. Forward is where your eyes are looking. You don't have eyes on the back of your head. You have eyes on the front of your head. And so it's a lot more uncomfortable to walk backwards than forwards. I believe in science. I believe in mathematics. And that's what the science and mathematics says.
Sure.
So why does the brain like to sit there in a past moment in time that is up to this point. It's impossible to go back and repair. I'm not saying there's no back to the future in our future,
right?
But up to this point, there's no time machine to be able to go and change anything. So it's almost like, to me, wasted energy, wasted expense, wasted time, wasted thought process. And all it does is fester inside me.
Right.
And does not allow me to grow. It doesn't allow me to fully enjoy the current moment because I'm too focused on the back moment.
Yeah, I definitely I have a hard time seeing the benefit of not forgiving yourself. I mean, I think somebody just commented actually on our live feed.
Right.
It says it has a lot to do with what you're talking about forgiving yourself for. And I'm gonna say it doesn't, actually, personally. And what I mean by that is, you know,
I could see where that would go. That might go to one of your other posts earlier last month.
Yeah.
About the child in the car.
Right. Here's my thing, and we're going to talk a whole lot about this in a future episode when we talk about forgiveness for other people.
Right.
But it still kind of remains the same, and that is there's a difference between the actor and the action. Some actions are not forgivable, but the hurt, confused person who hurts another is always forgivable.
Okay.
So there's a difference between who we are and what we do. And I think that's a big kind of a distinguishment that needs to be made. I think we have to understand that. Like, I'm not my actions. And so one of the things, like, I have on my tattooed on my arm here that says no regrets. And I've offended some people, believe it or not, with just that phrase. Because when they see no regrets, they're like, well, so you don't have anything in your life you've ever regret? You've been perfect? Mm-hmm. I was like, no, that's not really how I go about doing things. The reason why I have no regrets is because I know my methodology and how I make decisions. I know how I approach situations.
Right.
And so as long as I approach the situation from that perspective, I can't depend too heavily on the outcome. Right? It's all about my process leading up to it.
Right.
In other words, I've made bad decisions and done horrible things, but my thought process at the time was to make the best I could. And so, the outcome, it might not have been what I wanted, but I know what my thought process was going into it, my decision making, and so I can't hate that just because the outcome didn't turn out the way I thought it should, or if it ended up hurting somebody, whatever. Now, I can feel poorly about hurting somebody else or hurting myself, absolutely.
Right.
But it's one of those things, like, I have a little like Dharmaism, I guess, that I put out there, and it's, you got to forgive yourself for not knowing what you didn't know. Mm-hmm. At the end of every show, now that you know better, do better. Mm-hmm. And I think it kind of revolves around that, because I've seen a lot of people hurt themselves or hurt others, and a lot of times it's because they were struggling with something and they didn't have the skills necessary to skillfully handle whatever it was in front of them. No, in other words, it wasn't like intentionally, hey, I'm going to go hurt this person.
Right.
It was, I'm dealing with a lot of stuff, and I'm dealing with it very poorly, and it's spilling out on those around me. Now, once again, I'm not saying that forgiving yourself is saying that the action that you took was a good one, but it's forgiving yourself for making a mistake. It's forgiving yourself to having poor judgment, and that's the only way you can move on. Go ahead. I think you got something. I can see it all over your face.
No, I'm just thinking about the comment that you said somebody posted. I'm guessing on Facebook.
Well, he just also commented, was my methodology exactly the same my entire life? And no, I mean, as I've progressed and as I've learned better, I've done better. But my methodology has always been to make the best decision I can, and what I'm capable of is different as I grow and as I mature, as I have more tools with me. In other words, if something happens in front of me now that I respond to, my response today is going to be different than it was 20 years, but I have more skills now than I had 20 years ago. Like, when I was a kid, we talked about, I think it was last week on the show, that I was a bully when I was in elementary and middle school.
Right.
And so do I regret that? No, because that's who I was at the time. I wasn't intentionally trying to hurt people to get gain. I was experiencing pain in myself, and I didn't know what to do with it.
In other words, you deserve that ass whooping if you're one of those people that he bullied.
No, they didn't.
I think that's what you just said.
No, they didn't. But
at the moment,
I wasn't skillful enough to do anything other than whooping their ass. And so am I sorry for hurting somebody? Absolutely. But I can't apologize for being screwed up.
You're going to pay for their therapy sessions that they're still paying for now?
Exactly. But I was screwed up. I was dealing with problems. And I'm not trying to say it was the right decision.
Yeah, you're not making that okay.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Once again, there's a difference between the actor and the action.
Okay.
What we do isn't necessarily who we are.
Well, I'm just thinking, here's the problem I have with the whole not forgiving yourself or forgiving yourself deal. That just like with anything else, I mean, the lens I'm looking at my life right now is not the same lens I was looking at then.
Of course.
So it's almost impossible. I don't care how good of a memory you have. I don't care how insightful you may felt like you were then. You still were a different person.
Of course.
And so it's really, really hard to go back and say that you would do anything different or say anything different.
Yeah.
Because the lens that I carry right now out of these eyes is nowhere near the same.
Exactly.
Is nowhere near the same.
Well, it's like the other one where everybody's like, what would you do? You don't really know.
I don't know.
We think.
I don't know.
We have an outcome that we would
Right.
we would like to think that we would do.
Right.
But until presented with that particular situation, you don't really know.
I hurt people. You hurt people. We hurt people.
Yeah.
And as much as I would love, it's probably coming out of this.
I'm just getting feedback. It's just like echoing.
It's just echoing.
Yeah.
Well, that's because this thing.
Yeah.
As much as I'm thinking that, I would love forgiveness from the people that I hurt. There are some people that I know. There's some guys out there that I know have not forgiven me for certain things that I did, and I don't blame them. But it sounds almost like shallow to say that I've forgiven myself for what I did to them, but I had to because
Exactly.
I was carrying it. And, as bad as it was towards them, it was not doing me any good for the future. And I got this guy has responsibilities now to other people, to my children, to my wife, that I need to be the healthiest I can be right now.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? In other words, I can do something about it. Obviously, the kind of life that I've lived, being a certified addictions professional, counseling people for over 25 years in a private practice. Obviously, I've worked on giving back for a long time. Will it ever pay up the debt for the pain that I've caused other people? No.
Well, and that can't be your motivation either.
But exactly. I'm doing it because, to me, I feel like I can't make those negative actions mean nothing. And for me, by changing my life the way I did, forgiving myself so I'm the healthiest person possible and I have a clarity thought when I am helping other people, and it's not motivated by my pain, but instead motivated by helping them get out of their pain, then I'm a better tool. And that's all I can do from this day forward. I just don't want to I don't want to recause or be the cause of someone's pain today. That I can help, at least in that manner.
Yeah.
The manner that I've learned from.
Well,
I think I don't know. I go back to thinking what that other person said. What that person said, and I'm thinking, are there things that if I would have done them, would I have been able to forgive myself as easy as now? And I'm thinking, like you said, forgiveness is forgiveness regardless of what my action was, but it would have, the quality of the pain to someone else would have made it more difficult to forgive myself. For instance, if I would have done something to kill my child, if I would have done something that actually would have led to the end of the life of my child, or one of my children, I think it would have been a lot harder to forgive myself. And I would have hoped that I would have somebody around like you or me that could help me process through that. Because at the end of the day, I still believe that I would have to forgive myself.
Yeah, well, life doesn't just end at that point. For the child, obviously it would, but for you, there's still people you can help. There's still a mark you can make on this world. Like, you still deserve redemption of some sort.
Because there's people dealing with that right now, Trinity. And
well,
at the end of the day, those are the people that right now I could see watching this or listening to this and saying, I can never forgive myself. You don't understand, Trinity and Louie. It's easy to say where you're sitting, but you know what? I turned around for a few minutes, and my child died in the swimming pool. How the hell am I supposed to forgive myself? You tell me how I'm supposed to forgive myself. And I find it very difficult.
Well, it's actually interesting
to
you
make
should say
that easy.
There was a very specific moment, actually, in one of the groups that I remember. And for me, early on, it was one of my more difficult situations I was presented with.
Right.
I was talking about this very subject, and an individual who was dealing with addiction said to me, kind of got really angry about forgiving yourself. And he said, look, man, I in my drinking days, because this was obviously in an addiction realm.
Right.
In my drinking days, I put my baby in the car seat and drove drunk with my kid in my car. You know, I could have hurt them. I could have killed them. That's unforgivable.
That's true.
You know, and he was like, so you're telling me I got to forgive myself for that? And I said, yeah, that's exactly what I'm telling you. Like, and in your case specifically, it wasn't you. It was the addiction. It was the disease that took over your brain, was making you make really dumb decisions. Now, am I telling you that was a great idea? No. Am I telling you that you're not lucky as hell that nothing horrible happened? No. All those things are true.
Right.
But what's also true is you deserve forgiveness. Like, that's not who you are.
But why do you deserve forgiveness? I think that's the question.
Right. Why?
Yeah. Why do I deserve forgiveness?
Everybody deserves forgiveness, man.
Yeah. That sounds like a priest.
No, I'm just saying.
But why do I deserve forgiveness?
Because not forgiving yourself does nothing but hold you back and ruin your interactions with everybody you come into contact with.
Maybe I deserve that.
It's like no, you don't. No, you made a dumb decision. It happens, but what you would deserve is if you didn't learn from that decision and you continue to make it, then yeah, you deserve whatever consequences. But if you've learned from it, if you're trying to make a difference, if you know, you can't just sit there and hold on to it forever, because at that point you really are useless to yourself and everybody around you. At that point you really are, because you're not benefiting you or anybody else.
So you don't think there's any action that I could do in life that I deserve to be in pain for the rest of my life because of it?
No, I don't. Now, am I skillful enough to be able to exude that on a daily basis in every aspect of my life? No, I'm not. Like, for instance, if somebody were to hurt one of my kids,
right,
would I like to think that I'm strong enough to forgive that person?
Right.
I would like to think that, because that's what motivates me in my life. That's my path that I'm on.
Right.
However, I'm also human and I'm fallible, and so I don't know what I would do in that situation. Part of me says that the non-spiritual part of me would come out, and I would have hatred towards that person. But then the other part of me that is the spiritual side that says they did stupid shit. Yes, and it sucks and it hurts, but they still deserve forgiveness.
So let's take something that's...
And punishment and forgiveness are two different things, by the way.
Okay, and we need to talk about that.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about someone like Epstein that's in the news right now.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So Epstein,
the billionaire guy.
So supposed child molestation, you could say, because they were underage. Some were underage. That's the claim. Supposed rape, that's the claim. I mean, he never got convicted, so now we're always going to just be left like, you know, he was accused, so he was.
Yeah.
So he's always going to be viewed like he was, right?
Right.
So, you're saying that if Epstein were sitting here right now, you have to forgive yourself. But people that were harmed by him, people that were raped by him, or sexually abused by him, they don't want to, you know, they want him to be in pain for the rest of his life. Suffer, punk.
Sure.
You know,
Sure.
So what do they hear, you think, when you say, Epstein, you have to forgive yourself, or someone like it? Because there's some Epsteins watching or listening probably right now. There's some rapist motherfuckers that are listening.
Yeah, and not only that, there's also people who have, because I've seen both sides, right? Like, I've seen the people who, there's these shows out there, obviously, that document these types of things, and like, I've seen the shows, and it's commendable when somebody has forgiven the person who like murdered their child, for instance, and they're in prison, and they've gone and they've forgiven them.
I'm not that skilled.
But that's my point, is we can argue. I'm not saying it's easy.
I'm a counselor, and I'm not that skilled.
What I'm saying is what's right and what's wrong. I'm not saying what's easy.
Yeah.
And so for me personally, I would like to think if something like that happened to my children, I would still be strong enough to forgive that person. Having said that, I don't know if I would be. I would like to think that I would be. I know in my heart of hearts they deserve it. My spirituality tells me such, and that's what's important for my peace and their peace and everybody else's. But I'm just not sure if I would be skillful enough to do that. And so to me, I'm not going to argue what should be or shouldn't be or whatever. Like, I can't get into all that. But what I am going to say is they deserve forgiveness. And so this Epstein guy, you know, just because you forgive somebody else doesn't mean that there should be punishment. If somebody killed my child, even if I forgave them, I would still want them to be punished.
But why punish then? I mean,
because there's consequences to actions.
Okay, so for how long then? Is that a life punishment?
Whatever the law says.
Okay.
If there's a law there, man-made law, that says that they're supposed to serve X amount of time because they killed somebody, then I want them to serve that time.
So if the man-made law was 1 year, you'd be okay with that because that's the man-made law.
That's the man.
I mean, there's a lot of people out there.
Do I think it should be longer?
That have raped people,
potentially,
that have spent very little time in jail, in prison, and you know, I don't think law-wise it was justifiable. I still do, you know, I got to admit, Trinity, as much as I believe in everybody should forgive themselves, when I look at specific instances, there's some people that I hope they don't forgive themselves at least for a little bit longer. you know what I'm saying?
Just a little bit longer.
Just a little bit longer. I think you hold on to the pain just a little bit longer until I feel satisfied.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
I got to admit that.
Yeah, of course.
I
Well,
mean,
that's what I meant.
honest.
Like,
I mean,
it's
there's
simple, but it's not easy.
I mean, there's guys like Epstein where I say, no, you hold on to that pain just a little bit longer.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, would I like to see Epstein just be like, "Oh, I'm good, I forgive myself"? Well, then you didn't really.
That would piss me off.
You didn't really have anything to forgive in the first place. Then you didn't think that there was an issue.
Yeah,
you just moved on.
I think it would piss me off if
there's a difference in that as well.
If I was sitting in a courtroom, because this bastard just raped my kid or something.
But see, once again, now we're drifting more into the forgiving others.
No. But I'm
like you're saying what you're going to think about them forgiving themselves.
Yeah, let me come back to I'm going there. And he would sit there, and and let's say it's 2 years later, 3 years later, whatever, because sometimes trials take a long time.
Sure.
And then when they say, they sentence him, and then at the end of the sentencing, he would say, they'd say, "Would you like to address the court?" And he would say, "Yes, Your Honor, I think I am well deserved the punishment. I deserve it. The punishment fits the crime. Yes, sir. However, I just want to say this. I'm going to take this moment as a moment of inspiration for all the people out there suffering from deeds that they did. That." Forgive yourself. I have forgiven myself. It was 3 years ago. I was a different person. Right. I'll take the punishment, but I have forgiven myself so that I can. But I think I'd want to jump over that.
Well, sure.
I'm just saying.
But my point is, but is forgiving other people.
But he would be forgiving himself. Now, what you're saying is that is exactly where he should be.
Yes.
Okay.
See, like.
But we don't know what time that is.
I'm going to operate under the assumption that next week, if you're all tuning in at the moment,
we're going to have to do the forgiving.
Next week, we're going to do forgiving others.
We're going to have to,
because that's a different animal, of course. But what we're talking about is forgiving yourself, living with that.
I know, but I kind of would like him to suffer. And I guess what I'm saying,
that's you for somebody else.
I'm playing the devil's advocate here. I mean, obviously, but what I'm saying is that if I don't know for me, just like I would want him, even 3 years later, to still be feeling it.
Sure. I
don't know for me how long I should hold on to certain guilt or pain before I forgive myself. In other words, is there a time period for certain kinds of deeds?
I don't think there is. I think it's an internal thing.
Yeah, but that could be. We've seen people that are pretty kind of not 100% with it, and they forgive themselves within a day.
I mean, if it's.
It's not a day, right? I can't say, "Oh, I raped you yesterday. I'm sorry. I forgive myself. Can you forgive me too?" A day.
I don't know what's in their mind. From the outside looking in, it doesn't look good. But once again, we're not talking about forgiving.
I clearly don't live in nirvana.
We're talking about forgiving ourselves.
Where is this nirvana, and does it really exist?
What I'm talking about is the internal dialogue, not other people, right? Okay. So we've all done something in our past at varying degrees, good or bad, whatever. Right. Some worse than others. But we've all done things in our past,
right.
and we look at it through our current state of mind and our current, as you called it, lens, right?
Right.
So just looking at my own self, I'll keep this personal. So looking at my own life, some of the things I've done in my past that I'm absolutely not proud of. There's things that are worse than others. I have like 3 or 4 in my head right now that I probably wouldn't tell another living person because I'm ashamed of them, essentially, right? But it's hard to forgive me at times. So for me personally, it was easier at first in the forgiveness process to, instead of looking at me as an adult, to look at the poor kid, to look at the little kid me that went through some hell and didn't know what to do with it, and then bottled it up and took it out on everybody around him and thought that was the okay thing to do. I can look at that little kid and I'm sorry, man. I'm so sorry that you went through that. I am so sorry that you went through that and you didn't know what to do with it, and you didn't feel like anybody was helping you deal with it, and you dealt with it the only way you knew how, and that was just to move on with it.
Right.
And a consequence of that is you hurt a lot of people around you, right? And so it's easy for me now to forgive that little kid than it is to forgive the adult me, right? Yeah. So that's for me personally. That's where I started.
Sure.
Because the little kid grew up to be an adult that hurt other people.
Me too.
Right, and so when I look at it as a little kid that grew up to an adult, it's a much easier approach to take than just this adult that's walking around that should know better, and also because that's when we get into the whole forgiving other people is you should know better, which we'll get to on another show. But so for me, it's just easier to forgive the little kid.
Right.
It's easier to forgive that little kid in us that experienced.
It's always easier to forgive a kid, though.
Exactly. Well, we were all little kids. We were all little kids that were hurt.
Some of them out there are still little kids.
Sure, mentally. But my point is everybody forgives, or everybody deserves the forgiveness, right? And once again, some of the stuff that I did, absolutely not forgivable. No way in hell. I can think of a couple at the moment, but I deserve it because I can't overlook all the good that I've done as well. I'm still the same person that has been able to help others. I'm still the same person as being there for my children. I'm still the same person that's there for my wife. I'm still the same person that goes out of my way to help all these other people. Those few acts don't define who I am as a person. They define where I was at that moment in my life.
You just made me think of all the we are going to have to talk about this topic next week because you made me think about the Nazi war camp guys.
The Nazi war camp.
Yeah, you know how they get these Nazis now. Now they're like in their 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And they get them or even like Whitey Bulger. He went to jail 30 years after he committed crime.
We do have a couple comments on here though. Right. One comment was from Ben. He said, "Yeah, I'm going on 40, and I think I'm a way better fellow now, and try to make up for being an a-hole as much as possible." Another one from Michael. This was awesome. Interesting. Michael says, "My life has changed since I've forgiven myself. Yeah. By doing that, my relationship with my kids is 100%. Now they have their father back, and we moved forward, and we are stronger together than ever." Yeah. And that's kind of what I mean is forgiving yourself.
I had to.
Of course.
I had to. I mean, I could tell you this. If I wouldn't have forgiven myself, it was just so negative. Put it this way. I remember Dana constantly saying, "You're a much better person than much better." And it's like, I didn't notice that I was saying negative comments about myself. Right. I didn't notice it, to be honest, because it was my norm. But she would always say, and here's how I would. She would always say, when people say positive things about you, you really don't take it. You don't accept it. You really need to learn how to be okay with people saying positive things about you. And that's how I noticed that I had not yet forgiven myself. I noticed because it did feel very uncomfortable when somebody said, "You're a really good guy. You're a great person." And it would be like, if you only knew. That was always in my head. Oh, if you only knew the shit I've done, you wouldn't be saying that. I don't do that anymore. I now know how to accept that. And so that's how I knew I got better.
Well, here's another, and actually a really good point. Somebody commented, it was Danielle actually, and says, "In some ways, isn't self-forgiveness also making excuses for your actions or your behavior?" And that's
what I was kind of saying earlier, that that's how it feels at the moment, because it almost feels like I get a pass. It's like getting a hall pass.
Right. And I would say, no, it's not an excuse. No. I mean, part of forgiveness is taking ownership as well. Mm-hmm. Part of forgiveness is owning up to the fact that was a horrible thing. It was poor judgment. It was a bad idea. It was a bad move. It was a bad decision. It was a bad action. Whatever it was, you're owning and taking accountability for whatever said action or whatever you did. But part of the forgiveness is an understanding. There's an understanding of, hey, wait a minute. That's not who I am. That's what I did at the time, and this is why. Right. And then part of that forgiveness is also let me address the things that caused me to do that in the first place. Yeah. Let me be insightful enough to realize these things caused me to do that, so let me work on these things so I don't do that again.
Yeah, there's a line between factors that cause certain behaviors and excuse.
Sure.
There's a line. Factors are factors. It doesn't excuse the behavior, and it doesn't mean that everyone that experiences those factors or has those factors will do that same behavior.
Yeah, of course.
But it may be the reason you did, and when you forgave yourself or resolve the emotion that you have attached to those factors, all of a sudden now you're not doing that behavior, then obviously it was a reason.
Yeah.
Then because I felt physically abused by a certain individual within my family over and over again. Therefore, I was very aggressive on the outside. When I forgave that person and forgave myself for not going to the death and why I kept allowing that to happen, I felt, I blamed myself a lot. But when I dealt with that, I no longer had issue with that person. I no longer had issue with me, and it changed my behavior on the outside. It's like, whereas even my wife used to say, you'll get a kick out of this story. So a long time ago, Grandma Guyer, which is my wife's grandmother, was visiting us one time, right? And so her and I went to the store, went to Winn-Dixie, like we do a million other times, right?
Did they have Winn-Dixies back then when you were a kid?
So I was only like in my early 20s.
I thought you had to go to my 20s. To the forest and pick your food.
So I was in my 20s. So we come back, and the first thing Dana said was, "How'd it go?" I'm like, that's an odd question.
How'd it go? You mean the shopping trip?
Yeah. So me and Grandma go, "Good." And she goes, "Was it uneventful? Did anything happen?" And me and Grandma look at each other and go like, Jesus. She goes, "Because it's hard to go anywhere with Louie without something happening." What happened? And so she immediately, and I was like, all right. So I had to admit that, I don't know, I got in a little conversation with somebody in the parking lot. It almost turned into a fight. And then, it didn't. But then I took a couple of eggs that were in my shopping bag and I threw them out of the car. So anyway, The point is that Dana knew at that moment in my life that I was still holding on to so much shit,
Right.
that I was still overly aggressive on the outside world, and I got into conflicts like all the time.
Sure.
You know what I mean? You just looked at me wrong. It's like,
Yeah.
what the hell? You know?
Been there, done that.
Whereas now I look at it and like, Dana doesn't ask that same question anymore
Sure.
because I can go to the store now without supervision.
Exactly. And then there's a
But that's
follow-up.
an example of forgiving myself.
Absolutely. And then there's a follow-up question, too, from Danielle. Said, so you only should forgive yourself when you take ownership and learn from it. I would say that's part of the forgiveness process. I would say that without taking ownership, then you might not feel there's anything to forgive. The idea, the whole premise of forgiveness is acknowledging that this was not a good thing, and I'm forgiving myself. In other words, I'm allowing myself to understand that that's not who I am, that's what I did. And yes, it was poor choice. Yes, it was bad. Whatever it may be.
Yeah, I think it's that, and that's earlier when I was kind of joking around with, do you do it 24 hours later or whatever?
Sure.
I think you do have to let it marinate in there for a while to truly understand what led up to you doing that. Because your level of insight of understanding how it affects you and how it affects others, and a desire to do something differently, hopefully becomes so instinctual that you don't do it again. You don't repeat it. It doesn't become an instinct like if somebody comes up behind you, you don't want to always elbow them. If it's your kid that comes up behind you, you elbow your kid.
Sure.
Clearly you can't, so you have to get rid of certain instincts.
Yeah.
Well, much like if you're no longer in that same pain that you were, or dealing with those same emotions, you want to take away some of those instincts.
Well, that was something I even struggled with early on, right? Like with who I am now, because I felt even at that time, as I was in my spiritual journey, if you will, I felt like I was a good person. I mean, I wasn't out there hurting anybody intentionally. I mean, I was a bit of a dick, I guess, but I didn't feel that was an intentional towards them. That's just who I was at the time. I thought so, anyways. But I struggled a little bit with thinking, why have I done these things? Because I think I'm a good person. Like, why did I do these things?
Right.
And so I had to acknowledge that, I did them, and they weren't the best, and regardless of what my intent was, it still hurt somebody, and that wasn't what my intention was. And so I had to forgive myself in the sense of, that's not who I am. That's not what I want to do in my life.
Right.
And I did that because I was still dealing with a lot of trauma and pain that I thought I was done dealing with, but apparently I wasn't. And so to me, that was part of the forgiveness process, was first of all acknowledging that I hurt them, regardless if I meant to or not, and acknowledging that that's a problem. It needs to be worked on. And so I worked on those things, and now I think I'm a more, I'm getting back to who I am kind of a thing, right? Like those younger years when I was filled with angst, that's not who I was. I was doing a bunch of stuff, but that was all like facade. That was just me putting out to the world who I wanted them to think I was. And so now I think I'm getting closer to my true self, closer to who I really am deep down.
Right.
And that is, I am full of love and compassion towards people. I do have another side, but that's not who I am. That's what I can do. But who I am is much different. And so, that, and it is hard, obviously, depending on what it is. I mean, if you snapped at, a 7-Eleven worker while you're getting your donuts in the morning, it's a lot different than if you killed your kid. There's varying degrees of forgiveness, obviously, and I think some things take more time to marinate with than others. I'm not going to put a time frame on it because sometimes you're more insightful than others.
I can put a minimum. Not today.
Well, yeah, I think if you did it and within a minute later, you're like,
not today.
I would question the sincerity of that, I guess.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I'm not in your mind, so I don't know. But from the outside looking in, I would question the sincerity of forgiveness to happen literally within minutes or a day afterwards.
Right. Well, and
depending on how severe it was.
And going back to what Danielle said, I mean, if you haven't processed through it and understood it and come up with a different, way to play it out in your head, then it's just excuse making at that point.
Yeah.
It's not really forgiveness. It's just either letting it go, forgetting about it, calling it a mistake. I don't like calling things a mistake. I don't like using the word mistake, because that was my best thinking at the time.
Yeah, it was a poor decision.
So yeah, I like causing that was a bad man. Did the board of directors in my head came up with that for some reason and said that's a damn good idea. Let's go with it.
Yeah.
So someone either needs to be fired, but because nobody gets fired in my head. They only get put on restriction.
Exactly.
They get penalized, but they don't get fired. I have a government in my head.
Right.
It doesn't matter what they do; they never get fired.
Yeah,
I mean, the worst employee in my head is still there.
Well, and part of the whole forgiveness too. I have I do have my little cheat sheet here where
I like
I'm trying
cheat
to
sheets.
keep us on task.
I like cheat
Because
sheets.
you and I can do the whole squirrel thing very easily.
Okay.
I'm going to run down them real quick just to make sure we got them all in there.
Oh, please.
You know,
Trying to keep us
I've
on
got
task.
I've got to, man.
Whatever.
We don't have Denise anymore, so somebody's got to play the adult in the room.
Wow. That's a long time ago. Wow.
I know. But I do have, not knowing what you didn't know, you made the best decisions you could, hurt people. That is a big one. We all...
All right, let's go to that one.
Okay, hurt people.
Yeah, what do you mean?
It kind of goes back to the whole thing, like for myself, right? I was hurt and injured as a kid, and I mean both physically and emotionally. I was scarred. I saw and felt and experienced things that hurt me, and I never healed from those. I thought that I did, but I just postponed it. I just swept it kind of under the rug and moved on. And so, the hurt that I had created this angst in me that caused me to hurt other people.
Amen.
And so that's what I think. It's a phrase that gets used sometimes, but I don't think people respect what it means.
Right.
And that is hurt people. Like, you can't get shocked that the person who was injured emotionally lashed out at you at the moment. Like, is it really that far-fetched of an idea to understand? And is it that far-fetched to think that yourself as an injured person that hurt somebody else? The example I use all the time when it comes to the forgiveness world, usually in forgiving others, but it works here as well.
Right.
And that is, we've all hopefully owned a pet in our lives. I'm specifically thinking of a dog. Right. This is the example I typically use, and that is, you have a dog. It's been in your family for 10 years or something.
Right.
It's a great dog. It's been around forever, loyal companion, and then dog breaks its leg, and then dog goes in the corner to try to lick its wounds and stuff. You as the owner now you've got to address it. You're gonna go there and try to pick the dog up, take it to the vet, do whatever. Chances are pretty likely that if you go to grab the dog, it's going to nip at you and bite at you or growl at you.
Yeah.
Now, does that mean it's a horrible dog and it's just crap and you should get rid of it and all those last 10 years mean nothing?
Right.
Of course not. That dog was hurt. It was struggling. It was defensive. And it viewed you as a threat at the moment. Now, granted, it's not a reasonable thing to think because he's been there for 10 years.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. That pain supersedes any thought process that dog is having. It's all about survival. The lizard brain's taking over. Same thing with us. And so when we're hurt, it's all about survival. I'm going to live. I'm going to survive. I'm not thinking about your feelings. I'm not thinking about anything nice and kind. I'm surviving. I'm going to walk away from this engagement. And so the same thing with the dog. The dog is going to snip and bite back. The dog's not a worthless dog. The dog's not horrible. It's just, it was hurt and it lashed out.
Which is why Zoe, when she had that tack in her foot, was so rude to me and wouldn't let me take the tack out. She was just being like that dog, right?
That was a great video, by the way.
She was being that dog. Get away, Dad. I'll do it.
Yeah, I'll do it. It took like an hour. Anyways. But no, hurt people. And that's the example that I use a lot when it comes to forgiveness, and the same thing for us. Just because you had a moment of poor decision-making, a moment of unskillfulness, doesn't mean you're a bad person.
And emotional damage is not mental illness per se.
Yes, correct.
Okay, there's a lot of, and I know, we have a lot of people talking about mental illness right now with all the shootings and stuff like that, say mental illness, and that's really not fair to the people that are truly classified as mentally ill, and yet they're very productive people of society, which is what scares me about some of these laws, and I don't want to get political, but it scares me by some of those laws that are trying to get passed saying mentally ill people should not carry guns and stuff like that, because those people don't follow under maybe a schizophrenic or somebody or somebody with true bipolar or ADHD that have learned to deal with their mental illness, right? But they do qualify under somebody maybe with PTSD or some emotional damage. Yeah. And that's a different person sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. And it's hard to separate the two. But if you are one of those people that are emotionally damaged, therefore you got wrecked. So now you want to go wreck everybody.
Yeah, well, not even then. I don't even think. Like, I know for me, it wasn't my intent to actively hurt people. That was just a byproduct. My intent was just to be aggressive, and it was more of a protection thing for me.
I kind of no. I call bullshit.
I
call bullshit because it felt good. Because it felt good. I'm not talking about
the days where I pulled them out of their house and beat them up.
No, it felt good. It felt good because I got to be honest. I'm talking
about the lashing out.
We would hang out as a group, and any of my friends watching, from back home know the deal. You'd hang out. One moment you're all just partying. Next minute it's like, hey, let's go do this. And the violence was on. We went in as a pack to go hurt people. And that was very specific, very desired, and it felt really good.
Yeah, but I would say that your desire was to feel the good, not to hurt the person. And you connected the two.
I really did not care about people at that age.
Sure.
I cared about my boys.
If you didn't care about them, that means you also didn't care enough to hurt them. To me, I think you were more or less, you were seeking the joy, and you associated joy with hurting others. You weren't trying to hurt them. You're trying to get this feel good, just like the individual who is the addict.
Yes.
They're not trying to get high. They're just trying to feel good.
Yes.
The drug just so happens to bring that to them.
Yes, I was just trying to feel good.
Yeah, and you were confused on what was good.
I was
Much
very
like
confused.
everybody is.
I'm healed now. I mean, that's exactly what it was.
Exactly.
I was confused.
Yeah, pretty much.
I was displacing my frustration
Yes.
on other people.
Exactly.
Bastards.
And it was horrible, but
Yes.
still, that's what it was.
And I have forgiven myself.
Like, I know for me, I would lash out and be aggressive towards people. It wasn't because I was trying to hurt them. It was because I was trying to protect myself.
But it did feel good.
Yeah, of course it felt good. I mean, when you scratch an itch, it feels good.
The jerk-offs.
But that's because that's where I was at the time.
Don't you just love getting older and being able to look, God, man, I've been such an asshole in my past.
Exactly.
The older I get, the more I realize, Jesus, there's just like these little moments of assholeness.
Yes.
That you're like, geez, was I an asshole right there?
Yes.
Geez, so it makes you think, is there something I'm doing right now that I'm being an asshole right now?
Yes.
So if I was an asshole to anybody right now, currently, I will forgive myself tomorrow about it. Not today. Today,
You got to remember, you're a villain in somebody's story somewhere.
Today, my lens, I'm justified.
There you go. But
that's truth, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
of
there's
course.
something you're doing today that you have to
Yes.
forgive yourself tomorrow about.
Yes. You're unknowingly, I'm sure, offending somebody.
It just never ends.
At all times.
It just never ends.
Yeah, which is why forgiveness should be done every day, all
Every day.
Absolutely.
And for someone like me who's in recovery, and so my forgiveness is really important, because if I don't do it, it builds up, and if it builds up, it just turns into a different behavior, a different attitude, a different lifestyle, and I like the progression forward. So I have to let things go on a regular. So I would suggest to anybody, you have to do, clean out your closet on a regular basis.
Yeah, man.
You have to look what's in it. If not, you have a garage like my garage, which is just so full of shit, and you're like, Jesus Christ. You know what I mean? Something needs to be cleaned out here.
Well, and even with my kids and stuff, right, in my own home life, that's actually one of the things that I take the most exception towards, I guess. Somebody didn't take the ring. I'm assuming that's an inside joke.
Oh, Maynard. Thank you for saying that.
I just saw that somebody wrote on there, your friend never took the ring, laugh out loud. So I'm assuming there's a story there.
Maynard knows. I love Maynard today, and I loved Maynard before the ring. And there was a bad day where this ring that my mom bought me for graduating high school, it was a crushed nugget, 3 diamonds. Right. It's a cool ring. I left it in the car while we were playing some hoops. It ended up missing. I focused on Maynard as the culprit, and had to apologize to Maynard much years later after he disappeared. I don't know where he went. But
he went on Facebook. He's right there.
Well, he is now, and I've forgiven myself, and I've forgiven you. I've asked you also for forgiveness. That I'm sorry that for so many years I thought you did it, and that I actually was looking for him to do bad damage. And I was gonna do it, man. I really was gonna do. Even when I moved here and I was already clean and sober, when I heard that he was in Fort Myers, I thought he was in Fort Myers. I came to Florida. I said, "Oh, perfect." There's somebody on the list.
Sure.
That I can take out all this frustration that I'm still dealing with, and all this pain that I'm still doing, because I wasn't fully there yet.
Yeah. Well, that's the point.
And then when he finally reached out, I had to admit to him, "Hey, Maynard," and it was already like 15 years later, 20, right. And I said, "This is how." And then he said, "I didn't take it." I'm like, "Well, shit, if he by now he would have just admitted it if he took it, right?"
Right. You would assume.
So now I could truly let it all go.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I love Maynard right now, and I'm so glad that the crap that was flowing through my veins at that time, and the stuff that was happening, that I never acted out on just an assumption.
But that right
and thank you I think you forgave me. Thank you very much for forgiving me also, Maynard.
But that's a perfect example, though.
But our buddy Ray never forgave me for me putting a gun in his face because he kept telling the same damn story 5 million times.
Well, that's forgiving others. We'll address that one next week.
Now, you know damn well, Maynard, Ray deserved that crap, man. Dude, every time he got high, the guys told the same story. I finally said, "Dude, if you tell that story one more time, I swear to God, I'm going to blow you in the face."
Seems reasonable.
Seems reasonable at the time.
Yeah, of course.
See, asshole moments, and Maynard knows some of my asshole moments.
Sure, we all have them. At varying degrees, but we all have them.
I forgive myself, Maynard.
Exactly. Well, I mean, that's the point. Is we got to look back and realize, who I am now. Right. Like, I got to forgive myself what the past me did. You know what I mean? Like, the past me is not me.
Yeah.
And so, and it's hard, man. It is. It depending on what it is. It's like if I I don't know, if I push somebody,
Yeah.
Out of the way and cut in line or something like that.
Yeah.
It's obviously much easier to forgive than, me pulling somebody out of their house and whooping them in the front yard. It's a little bit different, degrees there.
So what's the process?
The process,
What process do you recommend to some people out there that are listening to us talk about this, but they're dealing with something, and some of it heavy, like maybe some of ours, where you really do have to forgive yourself, or else you're thinking your whole life, you're just thinking, what a piece of shit I am, and then you can never move forward. It freezes you.
Well, I think that's the first part, is acknowledging the damage that it's still doing. I think that's the first part. And then,
that's key right there.
And then take inventory. Take a legitimate inventory of what you did and why you did it.
Right.
Like, not the surface value of, he's been in a, no, why did you do it? What button inside you was it legitimately pushing that you felt the need to respond to? And then deal with those buttons, and that's the thing. Like, that honesty, I think a lot of people have a hard time with. That true, honest inventory of why I did what I did. Yeah. Oftentimes we'll say, it was because of whatever, like whatever surface, cool thing to say. But in all reality, it was some sort of fear-based thing. Like, I was afraid of losing what I have, or afraid of not getting what I want. Like, it was something along those lines, some sort of an insecurity that it touched with us.
Right.
And if you don't address that insecurity, then it's going to continue to control you.
On and on.
And so I think that when it comes to forgiving yourself, the first step is acknowledging the need for forgiveness, acknowledging that it's still doing damage,
right?
Addressing taking an inventory and addressing your insecurities that are causing you to what would the thing we always say is your button, you know what I mean? Like your button.
I walk around with a big old button like Flavor Flav has a clock.
Yeah.
I was walking around with a big old button.
Acknowledge that how big your button is and try to do your best to make that button smaller.
Man, hide that shit.
Yeah, man. And so I think that's
put it somewhere else.
Yeah. And once again, forgiving, I can't stress this enough. Forgiving something, it does not okay it.
Yeah.
Like, forgiving it, just acknowledging it and saying, I've got to move on.
Yeah.
But it's not saying, it's justified, it's okay.
Yeah,
no.
My behavior was not okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, two things can be true. I can move on from it, and it can be horrible and bad. It's horrible, it's bad, it's in the past. I can't put the toothpaste back into the tube.
Right.
I've got to move on. But because of that, I have more insight in my life now, and I have much more of a purpose to be good and kind than I did back then. Right. Who I was back then was hurt, and I was hurting other people. I can forgive that. I can forgive that little kid who grew up to be an adult that hurt others. I can absolutely do that.
And I was super intoxicated.
See, I can't blame that.
See, you were sober then. At least,
I was just an asshole.
At least, but you sprinkle a little cocaine on anybody, you take a regular asshole, you make him into a big asshole.
Yeah, well, I didn't have the excuse of drugs. I was just a prick.
Yeah.
I was just angry at the world, and I wanted to hurt. So, but like I said, that's not who I am anymore. Like, that's who I was.
Yeah.
And I was only that person back then because I didn't deal with my internal pain.
Yeah.
I never dealt with it. I never addressed it. I had survival mechanisms that I thought were the way to live life. And so I took those survival mechanisms with me everywhere I went. And it was spilling out onto everybody I came into contact with. And so for me, forgiving myself and forgiving others, and once again, we'll do the Forgiving Others show in a future date, but those are the most impactful things and the hardest things I've ever done in my life.
I'm glad we're doing these shows on forgiveness, because to be honest with you, I look at us too. And it's damn, bro. Look how many people we actually work to help on a daily basis.
Yeah, man.
Look at the kind of work we do. Look at how much love and embracing of others that we do. And I don't think either you or I would have ever thought that we would number one be doing this.
No.
But also embracing doing this, like enjoying doing this.
Yeah, I love what we do.
I love it.
It's the best ever.
But if you would have, I think if Lil Trinity and Lil Louie would be in here, they'd be like, nah.
No.
They'd go off together and just
we'd
probably bust some windows on the way out there.
Yeah, I'd be robbing somebody. If you looked at the teenage me,
oh my
I would
God.
I would never in a million years think this is where we're at.
I would leave this studio and say F that, and I'm going to go out there and create. If that's the way I'm going to turn out, hell no.
But the crucial factor there, though,
because I wouldn't understand it.
Well, that's the other thing, right?
I wouldn't understand it.
We wouldn't be doing any of the stuff that we do now had we not forgiven.
And I think that's the key for
We'd
those
still
watching,
be holding
right?
on to that stuff, and we wouldn't be impactful for other people.
Right.
We wouldn't have the insight and the wisdom that comes with growth and acknowledging things.
Right.
And that's part of why forgiveness is so important.
But that's also how it might make it difficult for somebody watching or listening to understand the importance, right? Is that I don't think there's a way to explain it to you that can help you understand how good it feels to forgive yourself if you've never done it. Just like if our younger selves would be watching us or listening to us, there's no way that I would be okay with this. I would really think my life turned out to crap. I wouldn't understand how beautiful this life is. I wouldn't understand how amazing this life is, because I would be so superficial in the way I'd be looking at it.
Yeah.
I'd be looking at it from a very superficial, angry lens, I wouldn't be able to truly understand the benefit to the kind of work I did forgiving myself. So I guess the recommendation really is to just, you have nothing to lose, really. What if you forgiving yourself or working on yourself the way Trinity's talking about, the way Dharma Guy's talking about it, it can actually just evolve yourself into a very different person. What's the negative there?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the negative is. I know what the negative of not doing it. The negative not doing it is more of the same. The same and possibly worse, because it's not going up. No, you're not going to make things better by holding on to that.
A downward escalator just doesn't go up. It just doesn't.
Correct.
And standing still on a downward escalator also doesn't stay still. Yeah. You're still going down.
Yeah. As the rest of the world evolves, you're devolving at that point.
Absolutely. That's why I love science so much. I love science and math so much, it's ridiculous.
Well, and I think that that's part of it.
Because all the answers are in it.
The other thing that I will say that I'll touch on a little bit as well, but just to kind of start the process of wrapping things up, because we're getting close to that time.
I'm getting there.
And that is, that you've accomplished the forgiveness part when you're able to converse about it, when you're able to be at peace with it. Now, I'm not saying agree with it. I'm not saying approve of it, but you're at peace with it.
Yeah.
Right. And that's important for not only forgiving yourself, but forgiving somebody else as well. And once again, we'll do the somebody else in the future. And one last comment here from your friend. He says, every time I listen to you guys, I always leave with more ways to move forward. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Maynard.
Thank you for that, actually. Thank you. I appreciate that. Those are the comments that keep us going, man.
Right. And the one word we haven't mentioned in today's show that I want you to address is our failures. To forgive ourselves for our failures. Because, sometimes the difference is like a millimeter. You know what I mean? Like, there's a person out there that would have found gold if they would have just dug a little bit to the right, or if they would have just did it one more day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So sometimes, your failures are not exactly what you perceive them to be. You just really don't know, and it doesn't mean that your effort was wasted.
No, to me, a failure is only a true failure if you didn't learn anything from it.
That's the key.
If you didn't learn anything from it, if you didn't become better, if you didn't acquire some bit of wisdom or insight from that failure, then it's an actual failure at that point.
Right.
Otherwise, it just didn't meet your expectations. It didn't, the resolution or the end result wasn't what you thought it should be.
Yeah.
But it is what it was supposed to be.
Right. Much like the women that they were 15, got pregnant in high school. They may have looked like a failure to get through high school without having a teenage pregnancy. But look at that beautiful baby child that you have later on.
Yeah, that's
it's
a
like
success.
how could you possibly look at that later and feel negative about it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I made it a simple way, but those are the things that I think about.
Well, yeah, the old, the Taoist story I've told on here before in other previous shows, and the farmer, his horse ran away, and then the next door neighbor comes by and says, "Oh, that sucks. Your horse ran away." He's like, "Well, maybe." The next day, the horse comes back with another horse. Mm-hmm. He's like, "Oh, that's awesome. You got 2 horses now. That's so great." Maybe the next day, or I don't know, the next time or whatever, his son goes out there and tries to ride the new horse, gets bucked off, breaks his leg. Neighbor comes by, and it's a horrible thing. "Oh, that so sucks." Blah blah blah. Maybe. Next day, the government comes by, trying to draft everybody into the military for a war. Can't take his son because he's got a broken leg. "Oh, that's so awesome that they couldn't take your son." Maybe, that's the whole point. Is you never know. Things are meant to be what they're meant to be. And
that dude will really annoy me, by the way, of every time.
Every time something happens.
Don't ever talk like that, Dharma Guy. Because if Dharma Guy has a radio show and I'm sitting here with you and I'm trying to be with, and all you ever do is. Maybe. And you don't go expound on that? No. If you ever say maybe, you please keep talking.
Maybe. But the point is, you just never know, right? And so the failures, what looks like a failure might actually be a failure. You never know. The point is to learn from it.
I'll let you know when I die is my old answer.
Yeah.
When they say, "That was a good thing," I said, "I don't know. I'll let you know when I die.
Yeah.
When the whole story is fully written,
Exactly.
then I can tell you what was a good thing and bad thing.
Yeah.
Until then, I don't even know if the bad things that are happening right now are not good things. That's same concept.
Well, like on Friday when we had the law enforcement in here,
Yeah.
I actually went out to go get employed for law enforcement for years ago, and it failed to work through. Was it really a failure? Because if I did that, I guarantee I wouldn't be sitting here right now.
And they weren't here to arrest us. I think we should say
we were working with them, but we were running out of time. So, let's do our tips. You got anything to add before I do the spiel?
No.
Well, that was very concise of you. I like that. All right. So, for those of you who watch on a consistent basis, thank you. For those of you who don't, why not? You can catch all the old shows on youtube.com/Dharma Time, or you can go to WPSN99.com. Having said that, for those of you who do watch, now is the time that we do our 3 tips to kind of give you some sort of an action plan and to essentially wrap up the show. So today's tips. Number 1, forgiving yourself. You are the most important person in your life to forgive. You really, truly are. Nobody else out there is important to your life as you are. And so you are the most important person to forgive. The second one is only you can do it. It doesn't matter if other people forgive you. It doesn't matter if you forgive others. You're the only one that can forgive yourself. Nobody else can do the work for you. Nobody else can prompt that. Only you can do that. And then lastly, the third one, and we kind of just mentioned a few minutes ago, you'll know that you've done the work and forgiven yourself when you're able to be at peace with the process. When you're able to talk about it, when you're able to address it and not get worked up, not get overly emotional, and kind of just be straightforward and factual with it, that's when you know you've done the work of forgiveness. So now that you know better, do better. Peace. Are you still here? What are you doing? I told you, go do better.